You've spelunked into the Matt Cave.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. This week, there's some sweet vindication for me, and I'll talk about what that is as far as like quarterbacks in the NFL are concerned. Then we're going to go into the bye week that was for both BYU football and Utah football. A lot of stuff happened for both teams, and neither of them were playing. It was a crazy, crazy Saturday, even Friday, for college football in the top 25. And then I'll talk about the preseason preview of the Utah Hockey Club, what I saw, what I liked, and I'll also talk about the upcoming season for the Utah Jazz. Jazz fans, be thankful we've got some hockey to look forward to. That's a little preview of the preview. And then I'll wrap up the show talking about Real Salt Lake finally getting a win, and a win that looked decent. So we'll get into that later. All right, everybody, thank you for being here. As always, follow me on those social medias, Facebook, The Matt Cave Podcast, on Twitter or X. It is at The Matt Cave Pod. And you can find me streaming on twitch.tv/mattscave, M-A-T-T-S, cave, every weeknight, starting about 6 p.m. Mountain Time, going for at least 2 hours, sometimes a little bit longer. And the YouTube, Matt Cave Podcast, search that up, you'll find me. And that's the socials. To tack on to that, wherever you're listening, however you're listening, please do me a favor, rate 5 stars, 5 thumbs up, whatever it is, wherever you listen, and leave a little wordy review. Even if it says something as much as Matt told me to leave this, that works. The algorithm just needs something there, and we'll get more spelunkers in here. You guys are awesome already. Let's just continue the wave. Okay, so that does it for all of that. Let's dive into things. And let's start with my vindication. So we are 5 weeks through the NFL season. The New York Jets, also known as the franchise where quarterbacks go to die, are 2-3 through their first 5 games. And to give you an idea, Aaron Rodgers' stat line is thus: 111 for 182 for 1,093 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 13 sacks. Let's compare that with Zach Wilson's first 5 games of last year. 91 of 149, 911 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 14 sacks. Now, I'm not saying Zach Wilson is better than Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers is washed up. What I'm saying is the Jets stink. Just as a franchise, as a place where talent goes to not exist anymore. I mean, look at what they're doing to Breece Hall. Breece Hall looks pedestrian. When he was playing with Zach Wilson, he was almost a Pro Bowler, almost Rookie of the Year. Garrett Wilson was a top 12 wide receiver in the league. Now with Aaron Rodgers and the system they're running, he disappears most weeks. This past game, he had a huge game against the Vikings in London, but before that, he was kind of a bystander in these games. So it's just... I'm not down-talking Aaron Rodgers. I'm not up-speaking Zach Wilson. What I'm doing here is I'm reminding everyone that if you are drafted by the New York Jets, just say no and go back to school. It's kind of like drugs. Just say no. Because you're not going to get anything with the New York Jets. All you're going to get is a fan base that is delusional. I don't know of a fan base that is more delusional than the Jets fan base in the NFL. Maybe Cowboys, but at least the Cowboys make the playoffs regularly. At least the Cowboys are semi-entertaining to watch, and they're not whining all the time. Whereas with the Jets, it's all finger-pointing, but when you point one finger out, 4 are pointing back to you. So that's kind of how it is with the New York Jets, and I just wanted to have a little vindication. I spent 3 years defending Zach Wilson, pointing out to you lovely spelunkers exactly what the problem was with the New York Jets. And it wasn't the quarterback position. It was the offensive coordinators not knowing what they were doing. Still is the case. It's the offensive line not being able to block paper. Still is the case. And it's wide receivers that are either overrated in the case of Corey Davis, or maybe still overrated in the case of Garrett Wilson. Who knows? Because the speak for Zach Wilson throughout his tenure in New York, which is mercifully over, and he gets to relax and relearn how to play the game of football after the New York Jets made him forget, And what was going around was Zach Wilson was afraid. Zach Wilson didn't know what he was doing. The game was too fast for him. He held onto the ball for too long. Can we say the same thing about Aaron Rodgers, a guy who's been in the league since I was in kindergarten? Well, not true, but it feels that way. You can't make that same excuse for Aaron Rodgers, so what's the problem? The problem is the organization. From the owner on down, the entire organization is busted. And then the fan base is, I would say, 50% of the blame too. They turn on the players way too fast. I'm sorry, but Tom Brady is a once-in-a-generation player. I understand you had to watch him for 20 years to dismantle your team, but he's a once-in-a-generation player. You're not getting him. So you have to develop talent. Look at what Geno Smith is doing with the Seahawks. Yeah, he's a pretty good quarterback. Look at what Sam Darnold is doing this year with the Minnesota Vikings. They're undefeated. He's 5-0. So you don't go to the Jets. If you're a quarterback, you don't go to the Jets if you want to have any semblance of a great career. That's what I'm saying here. And to everybody who was saying that it was Zach Wilson's fault, well, was it? All right, let's move on to the bye week that was for both Utah football and BYU football. So I'll start with BYU. BYU had two marquee wins, right, so far this season. Kansas State at home blew them out of the water. One of the more fun games I've ever seen out of BYU in recent memory. And the other one was against SMU. SMU is turning out to be a very electric offense. Lest you forget, BYU held SMU to 15 points. In pretty much every other game this season, SMU has scored more than 38. That's pretty darn good. So where are these two teams, BYU and Utah, stack in the AP Top 25? BYU's up to 14 from 16, and Utah is up to 16 from 17. So overall, a great week for both teams. For BYU, those two teams that they beat, Kansas State is at number 18, and SMU enters the rankings at number 25. That's pretty good. Sorry, Utah State, you got blown out by a Heisman frontrunner. That guy is not, I don't care what his birth certificate says, he's not of college age. That is a man running the ball. That was incredible what I was watching, and will watch probably for the rest of the season. The running back for Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, I think, Jeanty, is so good that he's just going to run over the competition. And I hope he does. Like, no injuries. Please, universe, no injuries for all of these Heisman contenders. Dylan Gabriel, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, even Shadur Sanders. No injuries, please. I want to watch some good football. The NFL has enough injuries. Let's not have it in college, too. Okay, that's my prayer to the universe. Hopefully it gets answered. But BYU at 14, Utah at 16. BYU's next test is against Arizona, and Texas Tech beat Arizona late night Saturday night. I was asleep. I was done at 10 p.m. I was like, all right, I'm done. No late game this week for me. I'm taking full advantage and getting my beauty sleep. And now BYU will face off against Arizona at home, 2 p.m. Mountain Time, afternoon kickoff. Thank the stars above. And Texas Tech kind of gave a tutorial on how to contain Arizona's quarterback and wide receiver, Fafita and McMillan, excuse me. And so I think BYU has the capability to do that because honestly, I think regardless of what I said before the season, what I've seen these first 5 weeks is BYU's defense is better than Texas Tech's. It's not better than Utah's. But Utah didn't have an offense. I detailed this last week. I'm not going to go over it again. But I think BYU has a very good shot at beating Arizona at home. And that's how we have to take this season if you're a BYU fan or a Utah fan. Because Utah fans, your season's not over. It's a long shot from over. But the way we take this is week by week. Do not look past the next week. For BYU, you don't look past Arizona. That's the game. That is who you play against. And then you move on to Oklahoma State. And then you move on to Central Florida. You don't look ahead. Don't do that. So Arizona on tap for BYU. It is on Fox at 2 p.m. Careful, that's the same slot that Utah was in, I believe. No, they were in the later slot. They were in the evening. So maybe it'll be different. But we move on to Utah now. Utah, that win against Oklahoma State is not looking as shiny as it did at one point. Oklahoma State has lost 3 in a row, and they have not looked good in any of them. They're up against Arizona State, who are surprisingly 4-1. Their quarterback, Sam Leavitt, could be the real deal. He's still a freshman, but he could be the real deal. And we saw what kind of happened against Noah Fafita and Arizona when there was a quarterback that had some talent, and the Utah offense was nowhere to be seen. Well, it was to be seen on the sideline, laughing while getting blown out. So this is all broken record time, Utah fans. Cam Rising plays, Utah wins. Simple as that. Cam Rising doesn't play, maybe Utah wins if they remember the formula instead of having the kid throw the ball almost 40 times. That's really what we're looking for here for Utah. Do I think they'll beat Arizona State? Absolutely. But it'll be easier for Utah to beat Arizona State if Cam Rising can play. Now, all of the rhetoric about Cam Rising being weak or soft or he's always injured. Yes, he's always injured, but he's also one of the most unlucky guys to ever play the game of football. The anger and ire should be directed at the coaching staff as well as the training staff, even the AD, just everybody but Cam Rising. And I think what's going to come from this saga of the last 2.5 years is the NCAA is going to require injury reporting, instead of whatever the coach says the Saturday or the Friday before Saturday. Oh, he's a game time decision. Well, we'll see how he looks. We'll get some change. I think there will be some meaningful change because not only does it kind of ruin the game scenario for the players, it ruins the experience for the fans. And we've got sports betting too. That's a lot of money. So that's going to cause some change here from the NCAA. But as it stands, bye week, hopefully both teams get healthy going into this next phase of the season. Both teams have a bye week before they face each other on November 9th. So this is kind of the next phase. These next 3 weeks will kind of sift out who is for real and who isn't. And if I'm being honest, I think Utah still is for real. That defense travels and a running game travels. They just need to remember that and not force their quarterback into doing whatever they tried to force him to do against Arizona. As for BYU, oh boy, I'm not confident in the least bit. I don't know if they'll win another game before they face off against Utah. Truly, I don't know. That's what this team is. I don't know. I can't prognosticate this team. They live and die by the turnover, and this year they are plus in turnovers, even with Jake Retzlaff doing his best to lose games. Eventually, that's going to come back and bite them. It really is. And then the fact that they still don't have a running game, we're like 2.5 years, just like the Cam Rising saga with Utah, it's the running game saga for BYU. Where's the running game? It's disappeared. Since Tyler Algier walked out the door, BYU has not had a consistent running game. That's not very good. All right, so let's move it right along, and let's talk about the Utah Hockey Club. What a preseason, huh? Only lost 2 games, beat my favorite hockey team, the Colorado Avalanche, twice. They did get, they got kind of stomped by the Golden Knights, but that's okay. That's okay. It's preseason, doesn't really matter. So the puck drops October 8th at the Delta Center against Chicago and Connor Bedard coming into Salt Lake City. And for the season, I have read anything from Utah, or I'm going to call them the club this season, just so we're all aware. Everybody okay with that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. The club is prognosticated anywhere from just barely missing the playoffs to being a dark horse candidate for the Stanley Cup. I do not believe the second one, and I don't really believe the first one. I think this team is solidly in the conversation of making the playoffs, period, hands down. They were almost on the road to making the playoffs last season. They lost a lot of their final games due to injury and being shorthanded and playing in front of like 100 fans. So I think the atmosphere in Utah will be different. I think they'll get more energy from the fans, and who knows what's going to happen at the trade deadline. Utah still has a ton of cap space even after locking up Dylan Genther for a long time. I foresee reinforcements on the way during the season. Other teams will be packing it in and trying to shed some guys, and Utah will be right there. The club is ready. The doors are open to the club. Come on in. I'm very confident in this team making the playoffs. Will they win their division? Absolutely not. No. The division title is going to be between Colorado, Dallas, and Nashville, which leaves Utah, Winnipeg, and St. Louis, and Minnesota kind of battling for that last position. So Utah is in the most difficult division, probably in hockey. And if not most difficult, it's the deepest. Because last season, Utah was the worst team. And now they've drastically improved. They've improved their blue line with those two huge trades on draft night with Marino. And forgive me, I forget his name. Let me look it up. The big Russian. And no, not Kolyachonik. He's Belarusian. We are looking at Mikhail Sergachev. That's who we're looking at. So those two guys alone will increase the floor of this team. And then the ceiling is anybody's guess, because the best players on this team are still so young. Dylan Genther, Josh Doan, which will always bring a smile to my face. Logan Cooley. Even Clayton Keller is still on the younger side. He's 26. So this team has a ton of potential, and they don't even need to fully realize it for this team to make the playoffs. They just need to be on the right path. So yes, playoffs, pretty much a lock, in my opinion, when it comes to the club. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a Western Conference Finals between my Avalanche and my club. That would be awesome. I wouldn't lose. Okay, I just needed a second to bask in that thought. So yeah, playoffs, and then probably the MVP of the team. I'm going to go with the goalie. I am. I've been impressed by what I've seen from Connor Ingram in the preseason. If he can stay healthy, I think he'll be the MVP of the team. I really do. Obviously, the easy pick is Sergachev or Keller or Genther, but I'm going to go with the goalie. I am, and I'm kind of biased. One of my good friends growing up was a goalie. Obviously, Chandler and Chunga over on Radio Ronin, they were both goalies, so I am biased. But I really do think Connor Ingram is going to have a great year. So book it, club fans. Playoffs, we're headed. Which leads us to a team that won't sniff the playoffs for a few years now, the Utah Jazz. Yeah. It's not going to be a good season when your head coach on NBA Media Day says, when he was asked about the focus of the season, because the last couple of seasons, Utah's remained competitive in the first half of the season. And then they packed it in. They shipped out the veterans that were doing well for draft picks and young capital. When the head coach, Will Hardy, who was extended, by the way, so we will get another couple of years of Will Hardy, which is good. I think he's a very good coach. Obviously, look at what he did in the first half of both seasons. Imagine what he can do with real talent. Now, when asked about what the focus of the team was at NBA Media Day, Will Hardy said that the focus is player development. For all of you Utah Jazz fans that want wins, you're not going to want to watch this year. You're just not. It's not going to be pretty. And keep the complaining to a minimum, especially when it comes to like Reddit and Twitter, where obviously those are just echo chambers of complaining and whining and yelling. But let's look for the positives this season. Let's see what Cody Williams can actually do. Let's see if Keontae George can make the leap. I want to know if Isaiah Collier can play the point, or if he can be a number 2 to Keontae George. I want to see Lauri Markkanen prove that he is a perennial all-star talent. And then I want to see the Jazz shut him down with like a quarter of the season to go, play him like 17 minutes a game or something. And I want to see John Collier kind of shut the haters up and then get traded at the trade deadline for some good stuff. That's what I want to see this year. I don't want to see Jordan Clarkson traded, period, end of story. He still wants to be here. Irregardless of what's going on with the team, the reset, restart, whatever you want to call it, Jordan Clarkson wants to stay here. And you know what? I want him here. So I do not want to see Jordan Clarkson traded. And I want to see this team make market improvements, be in competitive games throughout the season. Don't get blown out by middling teams. If you get blown out by like the Celtics or the Nuggets, yeah, whatever. Those guys are fighting for a ring. But don't get blown out by the Lakers. Don't get blown out by the Warriors. Those teams are not very good. They have ancient superstars in Steph Curry and LeBron James. I would think the youth would win out there and keep the games at least close. That's what I want to see this season from the Jazz. I don't want to see 40, 50 wins. I don't want to see them bust out to an early lead in the West like they did in the first year of this rebuild. I just want to see competitive games, and I want to see growth from the young guys. That's what I want to see, and that's exactly what Justin Zanuck and Will Hardy have both said. That's what they want to see, too. They want the young guys playing more minutes. My question is, why weren't we doing this 2 seasons ago? You know? Why weren't we getting those young guys then more minutes? I feel like we're 2 years late to this rebuild. But if the Jazz can tank out, flop for flag will be the rallying cry for this fan base. Flop for flag. That's what we want. So that's the season we're looking forward to. 2 drastically different seasons when it comes to the club and the Jazz. But that's kind of what we're looking forward to. And who knows, maybe I'm wrong like I was about Real Salt Lake. Real Salt Lake won their game against the worst team in the Western Conference, San Jose, on the road, 1-0, with Diego Luna scoring again. Man, that kid's good. So right now, Real Salt Lake is sitting in 4th place. They are tied on goal differential and points with Seattle, but Seattle has one more win than Real Salt Lake does, and that's the tiebreaker we're seeing there. They are clear, so they are going to finish top 4. It just depends on what happens in this final game of the season to see exactly where they're going to end up. Honestly, I would like to see them in 3rd. I think it's possible. Their final game of the season is against Vancouver, which, just like the Texas teams, always gives Real Salt Lake a headache. But if they can win that game, they'll finish at 59 points and have a very realistic shot at hosting a playoff game for the first time in years. I think that would be so cool. I'm so excited for that possibility. They just need to beat Vancouver. That's all they need to do. I don't know if they could do it. I mean, recent form would suggest that they have a good shot. Vancouver hasn't won a game in 5 games. Real Salt Lake has at least won 2. But Real Salt Lake hasn't lost either. They're 2-0-3. Or, depending on how you look at it, 2-3-0. However you put the WDL on your sheet, that's what it looks like. So they have 2 wins, 3 draws, 0 losses. Real Salt Lake does. So form would suggest that Real Salt Lake will win this match. But it's Real Salt Lake. Nobody knew what this team was going to be going into the season. I doubt even Pablo Mastroeni knew what was going on. He's the manager of the team. But if they get this win, finish top 3, oh man, that would be so cool. Pablo Mastroeni should win Manager of the Year. He won't. It'll go to the guy who has... It'll go to the Inter Miami guy. It just will. I don't like it, but it will. So that's what we're looking forward to this week, or not this week, in a couple of weeks, because professional soccer or professional football is going on a fortnight of rest for international competition, which means we look forward to Mauricio Pochettino's first games as the U.S. men's national team's manager. I am not expecting anything in these first 2 games. The first one is against Panama in Texas. The second one is against Mexico in Guadalajara. The U.S. has only ever won 1 game in Mexico, and that was in 2012. So history would suggest the U.S. isn't going to win that match. Even recent run of form would suggest the U.S. is not going to win that match. Who knows if they'll even win against Panama? Especially with Flo Balogun. He got hurt for his club literally yesterday. He hurt his shoulder, so he won't be playing, I would assume, in these friendlies. Which leaves really only one attacking option in Christian Pulisic, and Panama knows it. It'll be interesting to see how different the team plays if they play more freely and more open and don't park the bus every 5 minutes. I want to see just aggression. That's what I want to see, because we have young talent. We really do. Timothy Weah plays regular minutes for Juventus. Weston McKennie plays regular minutes for Juventus. That's a very big club in Italy. Obviously, Christian Pulisic, everybody knows about Captain America. He is fantastic for AC Milan, And hopefully that form continues through the World Cup in 2026. He doesn't take a dip anywhere. Yunus Musa is starting to really develop at AC Milan. He's starting to earn more minutes there. So we have the talent. Serginho Dest is going to be out for a while still with his knee injury. Tyler Adams, who knows? Like, he's the Cam Rising of the U.S. men's national team. And then the rest. Is there a striker? Is it Haji Wright? Probably not. Is it Josh Sargent? Maybe. Is it Ricardo Pepi? I don't think so. That guy's had so many chances to claim the striker position that eventually you just got to say you're not the guy. And I think that's what's going to happen. Flo Balogun could be, but he could have just put a stamp on it in this window. Unfortunately, the injury bug bit him. So going forward here, I just want to see a free-flowing, exciting brand of football for the U.S. men's national team to play. If you've watched Mauricio Pochettino's teams play at Chelsea or Tottenham, they did a high press, which is the forwards were up against the back four of the opposing team, pressuring the ball, trying to force a turnover to get quick offense. That's what I want to see, because we have the forwards to do it. We do. Tim Weah on one side, Christian Pulisic on the other. Flo Balogun in the middle would have been nice, but we'll have to see what Josh Sargent, Ricardo Pepi, Haji Wright can do. And then in the midfield, I want to see positivity. I don't want to see passes back to the back four and the goalie. I want to see positivity, creativity going forward. Weston McKennie is great when he's given license to be creative. When you tell him to hold the ball and be defensive, that's not his game. So hopefully Mauricio Pochettino develops a system to where that can work. But we'll have to see. Now, to wrap things up here, I don't really have anything in the realm of gaming to talk to you about other than please go watch me on my stream, interact with me, chat with me there. We can talk about anything. We don't have to talk about the game I'm playing. You can talk whatever you want to talk to me about. Happy to chat. Twitch.tv/MattsCave. Come chat. Happy to have you there. But coming up, there are a couple of games that I will be wanting to play on stream. I just need a capture card that can work with the newest generation of consoles. That's what I need. So I want to play NHL on stream. I want to play EAFC, college football. I want to play all of those on stream, but I can't because I don't have a capture card that can do it. So that's why I'm not playing those. That's why I'm playing Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft. I might even play Trading Card Game Store Simulator because that game has me in its clutches right now. I love that game. But if there is a game you want me to review or anything like that you want to see gameplay of that I've talked about in the past, hit me up. Let me know. All right, so that does it for the show this week, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. As always, leave that rating, review, comment, like, subscribe, wherever it is, wherever you listen. I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you next week when hopefully BYU stays undefeated and Utah beats Arizona State and Utah, the state, can claim dominance over Arizona yet again when we spelunk back into the Mad Cave.